Once a devotee asked Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharishi which method is the best for self realization. Bhagwan said, that depends on the temperament of the individual. Every person is born with the sanskaras, characteristics, or tendencies from his past lives. One method will prove easy to one person and another to another. There can be no general rule. There are many methods. You may practice self inquiry, asking yourself, who am I? Or if that doesn't appeal to you, you may meditate on I am Brahm or some other theme, or you may concentrate on an incantation or do invocation. The object in every case is to make the mind one pointed, to concentrate it on one thought and thereby exclude the many other thoughts. If we do this, the one thought also eventually goes and the mind is extinguished at its source. Dr. Masalawala placed in Bhagwan's hand a letter he had received from his friend V.K. Ajganokar, a gentleman of about 35, a follower of Gyaneshwar Maharaj, who is said to have attained jnana in his 28th year. The letter said, you call me Purana. Who is not Purana in this world? Bhagwan agreed and continuing in the vein in which he discoursed this morning, 15th, 3rd, 46, said, we first limit ourselves and then seek to become unlimited, as in fact we are always are. All our effort is only directed to giving up the notion that we are limited. The letter went on to say Ramana Maharishi is an exponent of the Ajata doctrine of Advaita Vedanta. Of course, it is a bit difficult. Bhagwan remarked on this. Somebody has told him so. I do not teach only the Ajata doctrine. I approve of all schools. The same truth has to be expressed in different ways to suit the capacity of the hearer. The Ajata doctrine says nothing exists except the one reality. There is no birth or death, or no projection or drawing in, no striving, no aspirant, no release, no bondage, no liberation. The one unity alone exists forever. To such as find it difficult to grasp this truth and who ask, how can we ignore this solid world we see all around us? The dream experience is pointed out, and they are told, all that you see depends upon the seer. Apart from the seer, there is no seen. This is called Drishti Shrishti Vada, or the argument that one first creates everything out of his mind and then sees what his mind has created. To such as cannot grasp even this end, who further argues the dream experience is so short, while the world always exists. The dream experience was limited to me, but the world is felt and seen not only by me but by so many, and we cannot call such a world non existent. The argument called Srishti Drishti Vada is addressed, and they are told, God first created such and such a thing out of such and such an element, and then something else, and so forth. That alone will satisfy this class. Their mind is otherwise not satisfied, and they ask themselves, how can all geography, all maps, all sciences, stars, planets, and the rules governing or relating to them all be totally untrue? To such, it is the best to say, yes, God created all this, and so you see it. Dr. Masalawala objected, but all these teachings cannot be true. Only one doctrine can be true. Bhagwan said all these viewpoints are only to suit the capacity of the learner. The absolute can only be one. Talking of the innumerable ways of different seekers, after God, Bhagwan said each should be allowed to go his own way, the way for which he alone may be built. It will not do to convert him to another path by violence. The Guru will go with the disciple along his own path and then gradually turn him into the supreme path when the time is ripe. Suppose a car is going to top speed, to stop it and to turn it at once would lead to a crash. Other methods are not necessarily exclusive of self inquiry. In fact, some of them may very well be combined with it. Second method of self realization is satsang. The greatest of all aids to self realization is the presence of a realized man. This is called satsang, which means literally fellowship with being. Even here, Bhagwan would sometimes explain that the real being is the self and therefore no physical form is needed for satsang. Nevertheless, he often dwelt on its benefits. Association with sages who have realized the truth removes material attachments. On these attachments being removed, the attachments of the mind are also destroyed. Those whose attachments of mind are thus destroyed become one with that which is motionless. They attain liberation while yet alive. Cherish association with such sages. That supreme state which is obtained here and now as a result of association with sages and realized through the deep meditation of self inquiry in contact with the heart cannot be gained with the aid of a guru or thought, though through knowledge of the scriptures or by spiritual merit or by any other means. If association with sages is obtained, to what purpose are the various methods of self discipline? Tell me of what use a fan when the cool, gentle south wind is blowing. The heat of mental and bodily excitement is allayed by the rays of the moon. Want and misery war are removed by the kalpaka trees. Sins are washed away by the sacred water of the Ganges, but all these afflictions are altogether banished by the mere darshan of the fearless sage. Neither the holy waters of pilgrimage nor the images of the gods made of earth and stone can stand comparison with the benign look of the sage. These purify one only after countless days of grace, but no sooner does the sage bestow his gracious glance than he purifies one. Second method of self realization is breath control. Mr. Prasad asked from Raman Maharishi whether the regular form of breath control is not better, in which breathing in, holding the breath, and breathing out are to the rhythm of 1:4:2. Bhagwan replied, all such rhythms, sometimes regulated not by counting but by incantations, are aids for controlling the mind, that is all. Watching the breath is also one form of breath control. Holding the breath is more violent and may be harmful when there is no proper guru to guide the practitioner at every step, but merely watching the breath is easier and involves no risk. Maharishi was very careful in authorizing breath control to explain why it was used, that it was helpful simply as a step toward mind control. The principle underlying the system of yoga is that the source of thought is also the source of breath and the vital force. Therefore, if one of them is effectively controlled, the other is also automatically brought under control. The source of the mind is the same as that of the breath and the vital forces. It is really the multitude of thoughts that constitute the mind. And the I thought is the primal thought of the mind and it itself the ego. But breath too has its origin at the same place whence the ego rises. Therefore, when the mind subsides, breath and the vital forces also subside. And conversely, when the latter subside, the former also subsides. Breath and vital forces are also described as the gross manifestations of the mind. Till the hour of death, the mind sustains and supports these forces in the physical body, and when life becomes extinct, the mind envelops them and carries them away. During sleep, however, the vital forces continues to function, although the mind is not manifest. This is according to the divine law and is intended to protect the body and to remove any possible doubt as to whether it is alive or dead while one is asleep. Without such arrangement by nature, sleeping bodies would often be cremated alive. The vitality apparent in breathing is left behind by the mind as a watchman, but in the wakeful state and in samadhi, when the mind subsides, breath also subsides. For this reason, because the mind has the sustaining and controlling power over breath and vital forces and is therefore ulterior to both of them, the practice of breath control is merely helpful in subduing the mind, but it cannot bring about its final extinction. Devotees asked, it is necessary to control one's breath. Bhagwan said, breath control is only an aid for diving inwards. One can as well dive down by controlling the mind. On the mind being controlled, the breath is automatically controlled. There is no need to practice breath control, mind control is enough. Breath control is recommended for the person who cannot control his mind directly. For the subsidence of the mind, there is no other means more effective and adequate than self inquiry, even though by other means the mind subsides, that is only apparently so. It will rise again. For instance, the mind subsides by means of breath control, yet such subsidence lasts only as long as the control of breath and vital forces continues. And when they are released, the mind also gets released, and immediately being externalized, it continues to wander through the force of subtle tendencies. Bhagwan said, breath control is a help in controlling the mind and is advised for such as find they cannot control the mind without some such aid. For those who can control their mind and concentrate, it is not necessary. It can be used at the beginning until one is able to control the mind, but then it should be given up. Bhagwan said, breath control is also a help. It is one of the various methods that are intended to help us attain ekagrata or one pointedness of mind. Breath control can also help to control the wandering minds and attain this one pointedness, and therefore it can be used, but one should not stop here. After obtaining control of the mind through breath control, one should not rest content with any experiences which may accrue therefrom, but should harness the controlled mind to the question, who am I, till the mind merges in the self. Step towards self realization is asana. Devotee asked, a number of asanas are mentioned. Which of them is the best? Bhagwan said, one pointedness of mind is the best posture. Hatha Yoga. Bhagwan said, the Hatha yogis claim to keep the body fit so that the inquiry may be effected without obstacles. They also say that life must be prolonged so that the inquiry may be carried to a successful end. Furthermore, there are those who use various drugs to that end. Their favorite example is that the canvas must be perfect before the painting is begun. Yes, but which is the canvas and which is the painting? According to them, the body is the canvas and the inquiry into the self, the painting, but is not the body itself a picture on the canvas of the self? Devotee asked, but Hatha Yoga is much spoken of as an aid. Bhagwan said, yes, even Great Pandits, well versed in Vedanta, continue the practice of it, otherwise, their minds will not subside. So, you may say it is useful for those who cannot otherwise still the mind. Light gazing is the fourth step towards self realization. Devotee asked, why should one not adopt other means such as gazing at a light? Bhagwan said, light gazing stupefies the mind and produces catalepsy of the will for the time being, but it produces no permanent benefit.